welcome to the Retro Cranbrook Archives.
This video may contain offensive material. Viewer discretion is advised.
Volunteers make our communities sing, and so I just really want to acknowledge the work of volunteers here. And also Pauline, who, though she is the administrator of the Cranbrook District Arts Council, she puts in a ton of volunteer time outside her job description. A couple of things coming up. We've got writers group meetings that occur here once a month, the fourth Monday of every month, sorry. We just hold it in the back room and have some laughs and do some exercises and talk about writing. It's really fun and low-key, and it's for people of all levels of writing skill.
Yes, I'm Pauline Artefacet, with the administrator for the Cranbrook and District Arts Council. And the exhibit and reading event that's taking place tonight is called Spring Thaw, When the Bodies Appear. Murder, mystery, mayhem, nothing mundane. And it's a bit of a brainchild of the Thursday's Child Writers Group that has their meetings, some of their meetings here, and as well the Cranbrook Writers Group has meetings here. And we have an assortment of other writers that are also reading tonight. And so the opening event tonight is writers are reading their own writings on this subject. And in conjunction with this, we have an exhibit. And some of the writers who are reading tonight have works in the exhibit, and other artists just chose to take part in the exhibit. So to start with a tour, over here we have artworks by photographs by Jerry Forget, and it's one of the few comic pieces entered in the exhibit. And one of the parts is there's a bunch of swans, and as you can see there's no swan heads, so it says mystery. And then over here we see all the swan heads, and we have solved. And then this next one is by an artist named Marie Dawson, and she's a brand new exhibiting artist. And this piece is called Death Anxiety, and it's about fear and fear of dying. And the interesting thing about this piece is that the skull here is meant to be Marie's skull. And once Marie told me that, I actually continually see, she did a very good job of recreating her own bone structure. We have quite a few younger artists participating in this particular exhibit, as well as some young writers reading. And over here in the corner, we have a piece by Mitchell Pocha. Mitchell has a rather macabre sense of style anyway. And so this one is called Blue Tree. And as you can see, it has teeth and mouths and tongues and everything else scattered throughout it, and chains. And then the next piece in the exhibit is a Man-Woman piece. And it's a demon. And the piece is called Jumping Out of a Dead Person. And the piece is called Mummy's Dead. Man-Woman is a well-known artist both locally and throughout the country, and even in parts of North America. I had heard of him 20 years ago when I lived in Toronto. The next piece here is, again, another young artist. This one is Carson Cartier, and Carson has a very interesting take on life. And the thing about this piece is Carson didn't have a name for it, and I asked him, well, what point are you trying to make? What is with the crow, the dead crow photographs? What's with the poem that's with it, and so on? And he said his concept that he had in mind was how everything's connected all through time, and how between our brains and so on, and that the crow is traditionally a native symbol for the soul. So he ended up naming the piece Quantum Soul, to imply all these connections between our souls and the universe and time and everything else. The next piece in the corner is another piece by Mitchell Pocha, and this piece is called Sanity. And as you can see, the gentleman in the with the cane has a very, very interesting pet. Rather a scary pet, to be frank about it. The next piece is again by Man-Woman, and this piece is called Coffin. And the coffin actually says, "This coffin is to lift you up, not put you down." And as you can see, Mr. Death in this piece is an extremely cheerful guy. We have another piece here by Marie Dawson. And this one is a lovely piece that just plays on the concept of life and death. And the colors are very spring-like to go with the theme. And then the death images and the shadow is black. And the piece is called Spider Plate, because what is the spider's web? It's his plate. Then we have another young artist again, Miranda de Groot. And Miranda has two pieces that belong together. And the top one, with bloody feet in it, says, "Oops." And then the lower one says, "I'm home." So I'm not sure you want to meet this young lady in a dark room. Actually, Miranda herself is a lovely, lovely young woman, but I have to say, rather eerie pieces. Okay, and now we have another young person yet again, and this is Lucas Bernhardt's piece, and it's called Wise Winds. And as you can see, the farmer was definitely wiser than the chicken, and the chicken, I'm guessing, is getting eaten. Now we have a photograph by Gert de Groot, and I'm not quite sure how Gert did this, but it is an actual photograph, and it's called G-Host. And as you can see, it's very alien looking, and yet I'm sure that knowing Gert, it's a very ordinary object, I wish I did know the story behind it, that he has played with on Photoshop to get light refractions and so on, and create these very alien forms looking out at you. Then up here we have another piece by Carson Cartier, and this piece has a most interesting title. It's "I Haven't Lost My Mind, I've Found It." And as you can see, he's holding his brain. So, and down below here we have a piece of my own. It's a piece that I did a long time ago. It's a 4-piece. And it's called Rape, Rest and Murder, Rest, Suicide, Rest. And it's basically based on a story from the book called The Three Marias. And the Three Marias were 3 Portuguese women who were thrown in jail during the fascist reign in Portugal. And they were thrown in jail for actually writing these books. And this particular piece of art is based on a story in the book about a woman who was raped by a general in the army, and then when he fell asleep, murdered him, smothered him, and then subsequently hung herself because she knew that that's what was going to happen to her socially once she was tried. The next piece is by another young artist, and it's Derek Johnson, and it's called The Dreaded Pirate Jack Sparrow. Up here, we have a piece by one of our writers who's going to be reading tonight, Melody Hugo, and this is called Nevertheless I Live, and it's about the joy in living, and there is a real young person in this story who found salvation, and so the words that go with this piece say, "I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me, and the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me." Down below, we have another piece that is God connected, and this is another man-woman piece. And this is a very personal piece to him, and not for sale. And it's well, you can see what it is, and it's called Hotline to God. I myself particularly like this piece. It's interesting, eh? Death is kind of the hotline to God in many ways. Next, we have a piece by another young artist again, and this is Toni Marie Stambulik, and I'm not sure of the story behind the piece, but the title kind of tells it all. It's called Blood and Romance. And up above, yet another piece by myself, and it's a quote from Milton, from Paradise Lost, And it says, the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. And down below, yet another piece by myself. And it's based on a song by a punk band called Crass. And it's basically a song about hope. And one of the lines in it, it's lots of little candles, flickering flames of hope. So if anyone wants to come and read the poem or listen to the song, it's by Crass, and it's called Bend the Question. I believe it's called Bend the Question. No, it's called Beg Your Pardon. It starts out, bend the question, bend the truth. Anyway, next we have another piece by another one of the writers again, Melody Huco again. And this piece is about how after learning that a friend of hers autistic son had talked yet again about committing suicide, she dreamed that he was jumping off a bridge and that an angel saved him, and subsequently found out later that something like that had indeed happened, and that he was found safe in hospital later that night. And last but not least, we have another piece again by Marie Dawson. And again, it's the play on that whole spring thing and then the death idea. And in this case, the frog is once again having dinner, or the toad is having dinner, I should say, my mistake. And the piece is called Totally Done Dinner. So a little humor scattered throughout this darkness. But it's a very, very interesting exhibit, and I recommend that people who like to think about their art certainly come down and see it. It's definitely food for thought art. And rather dark, so not for small children or people with sensitive psyche who might have nightmares later.
If it's not actually a yeah, it is a big switch.
Yeah, but that's good because then it makes it turns very quickly, whereas it indicates that they can approach you on internet and again. You decided to partake, did you?
No, because Dorothy said that you might want to read it. So.
Yeah. Place, any place?
Well, in the middle there was no one wants to be here.
Because we all know that that's the focus point for everybody. They keep their hands. Well, to be honest.
I'll be happy to be later.
Yes.
Whatever.
I was going to say, so my whole house is furnished, but my whole house is not old.
Oh, good. How would you like to do it? She's the very first? Yes. Yeah, I understand. Actually, I'm on this right now. Yes, you're not. Yeah.
I think, you might be comfy just over here.
I can keep this is Heather. I haven't seen all
Yeah. Hey everyone. Welcome. My name is Sue Browning, and I'm involved with the local Arts Council and with the Cranbrook Writers Group. And so on behalf of the Arts Council and the Writers Group and the other members of the other Writers Group, we would like to invite you, or thank you for coming here this evening. This week is National Volunteer Week, and so I particularly want to thank Dorothy and Barb, who have put this event together and are serving it with the Serving It Right program, so we can have a little bit of booze with our nosh. It's always very important to have some booze with your nosh. Anyway, what's that?
That's Mick booze.
Mick, yeah, I've got the Mick booze, yes. I go for the low rent stuff. But anyway, it's volunteers make our communities sing, and so I just really want to acknowledge the work of volunteers here. And also Pauline, who, though she is the administrator of the Cranbrook District Arts Council, she puts in a ton of volunteer time outside her job description. And I wanted to mention that a couple of things coming up. We've got writers group meetings that occur here once a month, the fourth Monday of every month, sorry. We just hold it in the back room and have some laughs and do some exercises and talk about writing. It's really fun and low-key, and it's for people of all levels of writing skill. Also, upcoming soon in the gallery, we've got a great show right here, but upcoming soon is a junior artist show. That's for people 12 and under or grade 6 and under. So if you know anybody who might be interested in submitting some art, we would gladly take it. And finally, there is a group called Singing for Non-Singers that meets here on the same night that the Cranbrook Writers Group meets. So it's actually quite awesome to listen to them sing. That's the fourth Monday of every month as well. They may meet more.
Oh, actually, no, they've changed. They're now meeting every Tuesday night.
Every Tuesday night.
6:30.
Oh, wow, okay,
Oh,
they're hardcore.
There's a drop-in paintings group too as well on Wednesday afternoons, and that, like everything that's held here, is open to any level and
Yeah.
lots of fun.
Thanks. Well, they're not going to be singing for non-singers much longer. They're going to be like singing for pretty good singers.
Well, they're actually singing for Greenhome and stuff already.
So there you go. Anyway, I would like to introduce our master of ceremonies this evening, our own personal road warrior, Dorothy McKay.
Thank you. As you can see this year, old shoes. I learned my lesson last year. No more pain, gain in pain, because quite frankly I found there wasn't. Just a lot of bandages I had to put on my toes. Anyway, it's Earth Day. Happy Earth Day, everybody. And I know some of you went over to Rotary Park there before you came here and heard some of the singing, etc. But you should know our first. I'm actually from Thursday's Children Writers Group, and we're one of the sponsors this year, as last year and everything. And our first person up, who always gets the crowd going, is Manwoman. He's also got one of his books here, Midnight Freak Show, that I've been reading from, and it's $20 if you'd like to pick one up.
I've actually got two of my books.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay, he has two books out here. You can pick up both, even better. Okay, Manny, get up there and
Come on, go be yellow.
Oh, no, we can leave that.
I'm supposed to be coming up here when the audience is already warmed up.
No, you're the warm-up, Manny.
Okay, and on the subject of tonight, I'm Mr. Death. I'm here to say something about my bad reputation. I do not kill people. I simply take them to a better world. Don't judge my world by yours. Your world is full of cravings, suffering, unfulfilled desires. My world is peace, truth. Your world is dark struggling. My world is serene. I just want to embrace you, be your friend. If you're sick, I'll take you to the land of joy. If you're poor and suffering, I'll take you to the land of Cadillacs. If you're unhappy, I'll take you to the land of eternal parties. Embrace me, leave your burdens behind, kill yourself tonight. Okay, we're gonna do this one. I need help. So your line is, I'm gonna be Jesus, and you say that with me every time I lift my finger there. I'm becoming a Christian all over again. This time I've decided I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll drink Christ's blood like a thirsty man who's crawled across a desert and refuses a Diet Coke. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll drink Christ's blood like a homeless man lying on his back at the slaughterhouse, catching the drips in his mouth. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll drink Christ's blood like a vampire with a thirst for forever. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll drink Christ's blood and become a river of compassion. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll eat Christ's body like Nero on a pillow, gorging juicy morsel after juicy morsel, fried, fricasseed, barbecued, boiled, poached, or sauteed. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll eat Christ's body with my face down in it like a pie eating contest. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll eat Christ's body like my last meal on death row, 10,000 volts away from eternal life, 39 steps from silence, that awful truth I crave so much. I'm gonna be Jesus. Did I say crave? I'll eat from the meat market of the gods, the butchered parts of my sovereignty. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll eat with hunger divine this feast I've long denied, but like a victorious savage eating his enemy's manhood, I'm gonna be Jesus. I'm gonna be Jesus down to his erections and his resurrections. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'll eat his secret parts. I'll eat poor Jesus' heart. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'm gonna be Jesus. I'm going to be Jesus. Sinking slowly into sanctuary, armed only with my sadness, I swim the deep currents, unavailable to those who dishonor their grief. I say, ride the sadness down to the place where only water dares go, and you will be lifted up to become rain upon a thirsty land. As a boy surrounded by brutalized boys looking for someone to prey upon, I dared not cry, until one night my sadness pulled me down unexpectedly like a rogue wave into the safest haven of my ocean, whirlpool of the gods, the maelstrom of love. I questioned why I wanted to live. I hated those white picket fences of polite society. I questioned why I wanted to live, how I wanted to live. I hated those yards like cemetery plots mowed by mindless men with no hearts. And I found a key to my own heart hidden in my tidal wave of tears. Grief became my ally. Grief gave me new eyes to see what I can't see when tears don't aid my vision. I say, ride the sadness down to become rain upon the thirsty land.
Thanks, Manny. Excellent as usual. Next in the presentation, we've got Melody Yuko, who's going to be doing. What are you doing first?
I thought it was Shirley.
Oh, right, it is. Sorry about that. Shirley, get up here.
I'm reading a piece called Fertile Imagination. The noise could have been the wind or just the house settling on its foundation. Straining my ears until I can hear my own blood rushing through my head makes the noise louder and more ominous. It truly sounded like a door opening and stealthy footfalls, but it was more likely my fertile imagination. I pull the covers over my head and attempt to get comfortable. Clatter. I catapult into an upright position, heart thumping, eyes hyperthyroid. Pulling on my dressing gown, I wrench open the bedroom door, cordless phone in hand, ready to phone 911 or clout somebody over the head with it. I rush into the kitchen. Again, that noise. Ice clinking into the freezer drawer. How had I forgotten to turn that wretched thing off before getting into bed? Ryan's ice maker. Over my vehement protests, he paid a fortune for a fridge with built-in ice maker on the door, while we built the rest of the house on a shoestring. Well, of course, selfishness is what makes Ryan who he is, a high-powered, sought-after lawyer presently in Dubai. My friends envy the money he makes now. They say all the years of sacrifice were worth it, but I still never see him. While we both worked 2 jobs to put him through university, the dream grew that one day he would make enough money to play tennis with me every Sunday. Leisurely cruises to wonderful destinations together. But now that he is high-powered and sought after, he takes jobs all over the world. I stay home as alone as ever.
visiting his mother in the care home, looking after his business affairs, waiting, always waiting for the time we will spend together. Giving my heart a few moments to slow down, I wander around the kitchen. Just the ice maker. Stop worrying about every little sound. Just being alone doesn't automatically make the world a dangerous place, I lecture myself sternly, until my blood pressure returns to normal. Then the outside motion detector lights up. A deer. It's just a deer. Happens every night. If it was anything more threatening, the dog would have barked. Grief, the dog would have barked even if it had been a cat. But no, she's sleeping peacefully in her little bed like I should be. Why worry about the light above the garage anyway? Nobody would want any of the old stuff stored there. The remnants of Graham's life stacked in there temporarily when she moved to the facility. The layers of dust attest to how long ago that was. The car's been parking in the driveway for 3 years now, no room for it inside. I gave up asking Ryan to get rid of her stuff. Emotional attachment. Funny how he gets all attached to things, but not to people. Clatter. Again the ice maker. Opening the freezer door, I flip the switch to off. Don't need to be frightened again by ice falling into the bucket. But really, clatter isn't the sound I heard that woke me. It was more like, I don't know, but it didn't seem like that noise. There I go again, letting my nerves get the best of me. Deep breath. Get a glass of water, cordless phone, lock the door, turn off the light. Turn on the light. Take a sleeping pill, sip of water, turn off the light, get into bed. Go to sleep. Damn, losing my edge. Almost got caught that time. Didn't forget anything. Sleeping pill for the dog. Flicked the motion detector switch a few times to get her used to it. Folded up the blankets into the plastic bag every morning. Stacked the boxes back on the old couch in the garage before letting myself out just before she leaves. And then I fumble with the door in the wind and almost blow the whole scenario. Too old to live in the streets now. Got to stay focused so that I can sleep in this woman's garage until the snow goes at least. Or else I'll be forced to let out my evil side and move into the house.
Okay, I think I've got it in order now. Melody, you're next. And Melody's going to be doing a very interesting story.
The responsible one. In the sunroom, people who could no longer think of anything to say still clustered together in groups of 2 or 3. Overhead, flickering fluorescent lights buzzed over orange naugahyde couches and faded gold fiberglass curtains, but greyness leaked through the permanently sealed north windows. There was no sun. A tailored, mousy-haired woman, wearing a muted brown tweed suit, with perfectly matched beige shoes, beige earrings, and beige handbag, which she tucked neatly beside her, balanced a packet of stationery on the arm of one of the couches. Thoughtfully, she wrote notes to include in a birthday card, 2 anniversary cards, and then a sympathy card. Grace sighed and pulled the wheelchair of a young man closer. He was loosely draped in a detergent-stiffened hospital gown. Bobbing her head around to try to place herself in front of his wandering eyes, she searched his face, ever hopeful that at any moment he might recognize his sister. "Are you all right, Terry? Would you like a drink?" she asked. Terry's lips pulled taut against his teeth, contorting his once handsome face. "Aye," he said in his strange new falsetto. Grace held an underside cup to his lips as she cradled his chin with her free hand, the way she did when he was a child. She set the water down on an end table with the tissue pulled from her purse and dabbed a rivulet of water seeping from the corner of his mouth. It felt familiar, feeding him tiny sips. After all, it was she who, at the age of 14, taught the pretty toddler to drink from a cup. It seemed the delivery truck that ran into Terry's rusted hatchback as he spun his secret victory lap around the mine office complex had also rammed away the past 26 years. "We can hope for some improvement," the doctors, nurses, and physiotherapists recited. "But the injury has left permanent damage. He will need constant care." Constant care. That's what Grace knew best how to give. Constant care for her little brother when the ghostly embolism killed their mother. Constant care for her gifted daughter Chelsea when her daddy with his own wandering eye problem no longer came home. Constant care for her blue-lipped dying father while he lingered in the nursing home, and constant care for all the other friends, co-workers, church members, and others who knew how responsible she was. Pretty clever Chelsea had potential. Grace wanted more for her daughter than what she'd been able to accomplish herself. The girl, currently being misled by a high school English teacher, thought she could live happily with a degree in English, but Grace knew she'd come around when her mother convinced her there was no reliable income in that. She was determined Chelsea would get a degree in business and go on to get an MBA from a good university, a very good university. Then perhaps intern with the executives from Vancouver and Toronto who chatted with Grace in the elevator when they visited. With their $1 million deals cashed in prestigiously branded briefcases, clutched in bejeweled hands, they certainly lacked for nothing. If only Grace's father had followed her advice and signed over his house and his savings to her before he became too ill to look after himself. She just knew the nursing home, which had fees based on ability to pay, would eventually claim all his assets. Chelsea's education could have been taken care of if only he had listened to her. Years before, she had worked out a financial plan for him. He merely had to divide his money into yearly gifts to her, which she promised to invest on his behalf. The old man said he needed time to think about it. He never trusted anybody. But Grace felt hurt when she realized his procrastination was due to distrust of his own daughter. She was good at her bookkeeper's job. The auditors never found a single mistake. Never. She may not have been a CGA, but she studied their work closely enough to know she could have been if she'd had the kind of opportunities she planned for her daughter to have. Didn't the way she always did Dad's taxes so he never had to pay anything prove that? The nurses even remarked about her careful attention to detail when she asked for the balled-up clothing in her brother's personal effects bag so she could wash them before the bloodstains set in. They told her most of his clothes had been cut off in the emergency room, but she could sign for them if she wanted to. Grace sighed with relief when she found the office keys stored with his curled driver's license, a lighter, and his gloves in the pocket of his jacket. She had warned him at least 3 times not to set them down anywhere. "You do what you have to do," she shrugged when the physiotherapist commented on how lucky her patient was to have such an attentive sister, especially considering how Grace had so much extra work to do now, what with the fire at the office building and all. It had not been easy looking out for Terry. She felt she had to think of everything. She found him jobs, paid his bills, and even lied to their father more than once about what he had been up to. More than once, also, she had needed to protect him from unsuitable women. He was too charming for his own good. "Grace, my ace, you are the only woman in the world who really knows that someday I'm going to be master of all of this," he said, making a grand sweeping gesture over the city from the window in her boss's luxurious office. "Me and you, sis. Me and you. You're the brains, and I'm the beauty," he teased as he turned and kissed her on the top of the head. She husked him and replaced the painting over the wall safe. Me and you. It was one of the last things he said to her. He could have done so much with his life, but he just couldn't seem to apply himself. Finding money to bail him out of his little escapades while she raised a daughter alone on bookkeeper's wages strained Grace's ingenuity. Lawyers were not cheap. Fortunately, her fastidiousness with the accounts provided opportunities to call in favors from some of the local legal department's employees, who thought she wouldn't notice a few discrepancies. They were sloppy. After years of picking up on almost every trick, she could have shown them how to do it so no one would ever find out. But of course, they never would have thought to ask good old Grace. The favors were just about all used up when Terry lost the last job she found him. Their attitude sucked, was the only explanation offered as he carried his computer and box of video games back into her living room. Grace again did Terry's laundry and prepared his favorite casseroles before leaving for work, but she felt anxiety multiply within her. The neat stack of bills in the inbox beside the phone was gaining altitude and compounded her determination to get Chelsea into a good university. She would do whatever she could to make sure Chelsea didn't have to live like this. Then it came to her. Terry could help. He did have certain talents. The chatter at the nursing station indicated shift change. Grace watched the staff gather around a plate of brownies she made for them. She was pleased these hard-working souls could take a few minutes for themselves. She could take care of Terry. "That's my boy," she said, urging another drop into her brother's slack mouth. At least the other party in the accident worked for a big company with good insurance. Unfortunately, it was the truck driver, distracted by the flash in his rearview mirror, that ran the stop sign this time. They would sue. That's what they would do. For Terry's sake, they would sue. She tipped the cup over his lower lip again. "AC," he slurred. "AC! Yes, honey, AC! It's me, AC! AC!" His childhood name for her. His eyes couldn't find her, but she was sure he knew her. Oh, she would give him constant care, and he would come around and soon be his old charming self. But this time she would protect him better. He just needed love, her love. Grace stroked his stubbled head affectionately, avoiding the side with the fresh red scar. "Yes, Terry, AC is here. AC will take care of everything." "Now, please, Terry," she thought, "please remember what you did with the money."
Well, next we have Joy Speak, who I think is going to talk to us about another death.
I have to get my hat. I'm sorry, I should have had it when I was sitting down.
Your hat?
My hat. Somebody told me it was really very nice.
I agree, you're being gracious.
Don't you think so? Charming. Oh, good. I am here tonight to deliver a eulogy. That may seem strange to you. It is indeed strange, because it's my own eulogy. A eulogy delivered before death. I may very well be the only person ever to deliver his or her own eulogy. To begin with, I should introduce myself, since many people no longer recognize me. As my hat indicates, I'm the much maligned apostrophe. When I was first introduced to the English-speaking world, my duties were well outlined, well defined. I may do this and I may not do that. Now, I will not say, "Look what a gift I have been to the English language." I will not be boastful. I will not speak boastfully. My main duty has been to show possession in a totally accurate fashion. Much later, I helped long-winded, pompous people speak in a more colloquial fashion by enabling writers to use contractions such as can't, C-A-N apostrophe T, and haven't, H-A-V-N apostrophe T. I'll tell you the word that has put the last nail in my coffin, the one that has done me in. The word is it's. Does one wish to show ownership, or does one wish to use a shortened form of it is, a contraction or possession? Students often don't take the time to learn the difference in meaning and spelling, and many, having reached the level of instructor without having mastered the skill themselves, continue to pass on their misinformation. To add insult to injury, to add insult to injury, many place me, the apostrophe, in spots where I should never ever be seen, such as in plain plural words, as you might find in meals or bargains. Many people insert me before the plural S, such as MEAL apostrophe S, and bargains, BARGAIN apostrophe S. Cranbrook Street bears many enticing food ads, often using nauseating spelling. Like most heroes, I have been misused, slandered, ignored, and dismissed. My final, most heartfelt request is that I not be forgotten by English language historians. I was given a duty. I upheld my end of it. My death is imminent. I did my duty. I herewith offer you my personal eulogy. It's called The Death of the Apostrophe. The oft mistreated apostrophe has met its master, plain to see. Folks leave me out or throw me in where I'm not needed. Just can't win. What's to become of little me? I'm just a bloomin' tragedy. I used to think I served the Queen by helping folks say what they mean. But now the garden's growing wild, since spelling has become self-styled. I leave the page, my tears won't cease. Please mark my grave, liege, rest in peace.
Now I'm worried about whether mine's going to have the apostrophes in the right place. It's a good thing I didn't let Joyce check before we came tonight. Okay, next we've got Jennifer Sterling.
Thanks for having me here again today. I thought a lot about spring thaw and what that means to me. And I'm in an interesting place as an artist right now and a creative person. And I just decided to use my creative brain right now because I've been using the other side of my brain for quite a while. So thanks for listening. I hope this poem here, I hope every woman in the audience can relate to it because we all have this in common. This is called My Happening. It is for me and only me, unique to me, my happening. The blood runs down, absolving me, forming three, the trinity of happening. Timeless be the inner me, a sacred sea of happening. The clock ticks on, the binding song, our trinity of happening. Thank you. And this one is called No Vacancy. Vacant she lies in a shell of disguise, hiding from what is to come. Barely there, pulling hair, a piñata without a prize. Spinning, spinning, out of control, where she'll stop nobody knows. A record skipping, scratching fast. This can't hurt, but will it last? Racing, running in her mind, stalling, stopping, running behind a ghost of Christmas past. Pleading, pleading with the host to change the tune or she is toast. Stop now, stop, face it, break it, smash it to bits, break apart with uneven hits. Change, girl, change, move away from here to there, no vacancy.
Thanks, that was great. Some of you may wonder how we came up with the concept for spring thaw, when the bodies arise, murder, mayhem, and nothing mundane. And the answer is you have to have a force of nature ex-cop from Calgary come up with it. Dorothy?
Oh, pshaw. Okay. What's that?
From Dorothy.
Yeah. Oh, how I wish. Anyway, I did a short but graphic piece about something that actually did happen to a police officer in Calgary. And what I do is I always find the truth is at the bottom, and I just layer the characters above it. Anyway, this one is called When It's Right to Spit. Frank took the elevator from the lobby up to the 14th floor, then the staircase to the 15th floor where the domestic disturbance was supposedly going on. With each step, thoughts intruded into the plan he was making. Crap, another domestic. I hate domestic disturbances. Almost no place to take cover in the apartment hallway. I felt something wrong or bad was going to happen all day. Why? Why did I take this call so close to the end of the shift? Oh, because there was no one else, that's why. A man and woman yelling at each other. Shit, I hope my backup gets here soon. Can you hear that? When he reached the 15th floor, he crouched in the small corner created by the door to the fire escape and the stairs. He waited until he had regained his breath from the quick, quiet run up the stairs. Finally, he stepped quietly into the hallway on the 15th floor. Except for the rushing noise in his ears and the sound of his heart beating loudly, there was only a hushed tension in the air. Each door concealed a life or lives. Only one door concealed his call. He was in the midst of whispering into this portable radio that all was quiet when the silence was ripped apart by a razor-edged cry. Frank jumped. His body tightened as he pulled his gun. The ear-splitting sound stopped just as quickly as it began. The long hallway was quiet again. The air felt suddenly heavy, like it was when he had been an undercover bagman at a meth lab. After the drug squad kicked in the door, and he had to walk through the lab wearing a self-contained breathing apparatus. The air was so weighted down with chemical poisons that one spark could have blown him into a billion bits, so even God couldn't find his soul. All these thoughts flashed through his mind as he crept down the hallway. He checked the numbers on each door until he found the correct one. He backed up to the right when he found out that the apartment door opened to the right. If the occupants opened the door to look out, their line of sight would be to the left. They would not see him unless they heard the thumping of his heart. Another cry, just as sharp but not as long, quickly tumbling down into a low moan. Adrenaline like jet fuel shot down his spine, along his arms and down his legs, making his hearing more accurate. His whole body felt stronger, more efficient. Frank, despite the bulkiness of his police uniform, moved into position silently. The uniform was like a second skin to him after so many years on the job. He listened. All he could hear was a low, bubbling hiss and irregular thumping sounds. Should I go in, or should I wait for backup? She could still be alive. Fuck it, I'm going in. He held his gun in the down position and reached for the doorknob and tried it. Unlocked. Gently, ever so gently, turning the knob until he felt the click of the door opening. Crap. The sound of the unlocked catch opening sounded large in the silence. He thought as he threw the door open. The adrenaline made his eyesight sharper and his brain more sensitive to the minutiae of the scene before him. There, lying on the apartment hallway, was the body of a female. The odd thumping sound he had heard was the attacker kneeling over her, repeatedly plunging a large hunting knife into her body. He was so attuned to the scene before him that he could see the knife dimple the victim's skin a fraction before its sharpness and the force of the blows drove the knife into the victim. There were blood spatters all over the victim and her attacker, a large, low-browed man in a dirty t-shirt. His face and balding head were covered with a mixture of grease, sweat, and blood. The pool of blood on the floor by the gaping wound on the victim's neck continued to grow as the arterial spray slowed to a gush, then a trickle. The spray had decorated the walls as if a mad painter had dipped his brush in a can of blood and was swinging it up and down over the walls, ceiling, and light fixtures. "Police, don't move!" Frank shouted. The attacker hesitated, startled at the interruption. Their eyes locked. Frank felt and saw the arctic indifference within that look. The man jumped up, bolted towards the back of the apartment. Frank charged after him, nearly slipping in the blood. Too late, as the man ran out in the balcony, Frank realized what the man intended to do and tried to cut him off. He felt the warmth of the man's hand as he grabbed for his wrist. but his attempt was an inch too slow. The man flung himself over the balcony and fell 15 stories, screaming all the way down until the concrete broke his fall and silenced his screams. Frank had watched the man's rapid descent. He thought the man looked like a large human sack full of blood, guts, and bones. The human sack exploded as it hit the ground. The skull cracked open, the brain popped out and wobbled for a few minutes before finding its final resting place. Frank leaned slightly over the balcony banister, looking down at what was left of the man below. Then he spat to get the bitter bile taste of failure out of his mouth and thought, I hope wherever death has taken that woman, she has heard the screams as that bastard plunged down the 15 stories and burst into a sack of shit on the cement below. After all that had happened, there was a brief moment when the world seemed to have stopped, when all was quiet, and the only sound was a rushing ocean noises in his ears. Frank pulled out a cigarette and lit it just as the sound of 2 sets of heavy police boots entered the apartment. One pair stopped by the woman where the woman lay, while the other pair continued towards his location. Frankie, where are you? Are you all right? Roared Eddie Turman as he ran out onto the balcony. Frank had put out his hand to stop him just before there were 2 grease spots down below. Jesus Christ Almighty, why didn't you answer, Frank? Eddie asked in a quieter voice. I thought you might have gone over with that asshole. He looked at Frank's expressionless face and steady hands. Well, at least we don't have to worry about a trial and some bleeding heart, liberal shithead judge releasing that asshole, Frank replied, before taking one last drag on the cigarette he'd been smoking it, then flicking the butt over the balcony and turning away. Frank, just leave the notes. Frank, just leave Jim and I your notes. We will do up the report, Eddie added as a look of worry slid over his face, over Frank's odd but almost indifferent behavior. Thanks, Eddie. I'll leave them at the office. Man, I've worked too much overtime today. I need to go home, Frank said. Eddie nodded in sympathy. Frank retraced his steps through the apartment and down the hall as the usual emergency crews ran into the apartment he had just vacated. He thought to himself that the apartment building seemed less menacing somehow, and yet his steps quickened with a sudden urge to get out of this place. God, I need to go sit in the dark, my own darkness and my own secrets. Think about getting those eyes out of mine, get those screams out of my ears. If I do up my notes out in my police car, then go in and get changed before anybody notices, then I can go home. Just go home. Thank you. And on that happy note, we're going to have Avalon finish off the first part of our program with a piece.
Hi. So this is my first time reading anything in front of anyone, so please forgive me. And I just want to let you know that I wrote this first piece around Remembrance Day. So it is a Remembrance Day piece. I could be any soldier, from any country, from any time. I watched myself slip away. My heart stopped beating. I knew that I was dying. I felt regret, remorse, and loss for all of life left unlived. Yet, at the same time, a part of me felt a sense of peace at leaving the horrors of warfare behind. The bullet that had ended my life had also ended the unbearable pain I had lived with. The pain of seeing a man die by my own hands, his icy eyes glazing over and staring at me as if to say, we're the same. Pain of a family left behind, their fallen tears, of loss, anxiety, and hope for a safe return. The heartache of carrying a fallen comrade off the field and praying he would be there to stand by me the next day. The stench of blood in the air and all the pain of war was almost enough to make death seem bearable. As I became part of the universal whole, a sense of peace washed over me. Sadly though, like my life, peace was short-lived. From my place in the sky, I saw the world change. It grew and evolved and yet the pain of warfare stayed the same. The scars shaping the hearts of men, and the destruction marring the face of the earth continued through time. The technology was greater, the technique advanced, and the death fewer. However, good-hearted people still fought each other, and families still cried with worry. I fought so that future generations could live in a world of peace, yet warfare is still occurring. Have people learned nothing? Was my death in vain? I pondered this as I watched a boy, who could have been myself, say goodbye to the ones he loved. His sister and his mother were crying, and his father looked as if he had taken a bullet to the heart. The boy stood with composure and struggled to smile. He told his family not to fear, for he would return in no time. But the flicker in his smile gave away his hidden doubt. I felt disappointment and shame for the world below me, but then I saw it. Thousands of people stood together as a woman spoke, her voice carried above the crowd. Remember those that fought for freedom and those that lost their lives so we can live in peace. Whether they were a sibling, a grandparent, a father, a mother, or even a stranger to you, they paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Their bravery and unfaltering courage had given us hope for a brighter future. She bowed her head. Please join me now in a moment of reflection. Silence followed. Some stood with their eyes closed. Others seemed lost in deep thought. And the sound of a single trumpet drifted over thousands of heads. They remembered not all was in vain. Knowing the world desired peace, I could now watch with a newfound hope. Maybe this generation could finally be the ones to discover the true purpose of remembrance. And this one's a lot shorter, to the point, and just a little bit crazy. So it's called A Bed of Secrets. She fired the last shot with less hesitation than a madman. It was only time until it came to this. It had been adding up, year after year, and with every little prick at her skin, she bled more inside. Now it was his time to bleed. Pulling his body towards the door, she watched the red glass streak the floor. Oh, how good freedom felt. Dig, throw, dig, throw. Dirt had never been so comforting. With one last look at the face that had marred her soul, she pushed them in and repositioned the earth. Then, as calmly as if she were any ordinary gardener, she whistled a tune and threw seeds over the fresh soil. Oh, how beautiful her new flower bed would be.
Okay, we have a short intermission right now for about, 20 minutes or so. If everybody wants to get some wine, cheese, cookies, eat them at your own risk, Polly told me. So I don't know what that means. And it's the strangest thing, when I walked up here, I suddenly realized that was an eye. Okay, have a break, you guys. Yeah, okay. We're going to start without Mary, one of our audience. We have a special guest writer. Keith Powell has written a book called Living in the Shadow of Fisher's Peak. He has kindly brought some copies if somebody would like to read it. But he is going to be reading about the first murder in Cranbrook. So everybody give him a hand and go on.
So first of all, I'd like to thank the Arts Council for inviting me to read tonight. So, writing has been a bit of a solo.
Just since you got a book published,
So it is nice to be in the company of other writers, so I'm pleased to be here this evening. So just to give you a little bit of background, all of us know Fisher Peak, it's sort of the icon of the valley, and many of us probably don't know why it's called Fisher Peak or so forth. So it's always fascinated me, and I've often hiked up into Fisherville and the Wild Horse and so forth. And several years ago, I had an opportunity to do sort of an interpretive exploration trip, and took up probably about 30 or 40 people and just told them about the history. Did a lot of research, and that was sort of the genesis of the book. So I've written a book about Jack Fisher, who was a California 49er, was born in Philadelphia in 1833, went across the United States in 1849, went to California and worked his way up into Walla Walla, Washington, which was sort of the depot for all the supplies into this neck of the woods. And then he made his way up into Wild Horse Creek. And this is the story of his adventure. I think he's a pretty significant regional figure. He's got Fisherville named after him. He's got Mount Fisher, and down by Libby, Montana, he has the Fisher River. And yet he lies in an unmarked grave in the Kalispell Cemetery. And so I think one of my objectives in doing this is to really encourage people to support the fact that we're going to put a sort of a plaque or just a recognition on his grave. So anyways, I just have a brief reading from my book, so I'll just start. In Canada, Fenian was used to designate a group of Irish radicals known as the American branch in the Fenian Brotherhood in 1860. The Fenians organized several attempts to invade various parts of southern Canada, which was, of course, under British dominion. The ultimate goal of the Fenian raids was to hold Canada hostage and therefore be in a position to ask the United Kingdom to give Ireland independence. Because of the invasion attempts, support and/or collaboration with the Fenians in Canada became very rare even among the Irish. However, Fenian sentiments ran deep along the banks of Wild Horse Creek, as 2/3 of the miners who had headed north from California were of Irish descent. Add the radical sentiments of those with Fenian leanings to the rough and ready mix of American miners on the creek, then stir in a generous portion of whiskey, an abundance of gold, and the recent arrival of a gaggle of women with the names like Axe-Handle Bertha, Little Lou, Gunpowder Sue, and Wildcat Jenny, and a potentially explosive situation quickly developed. Within months, a good-sized mining camp dubbed Fisherville sprung up out of the wilderness on a plateau above Wild Horse Creek. It was supplied by a constant stream of ox train from Walla Walla and Frenchtown, Montana. 4 restaurants were established, regular boarders at the makeshift hotels paid $14 to $18 per week. Numerous retail outlets and a large brewery were soon constructed. The camp of Fisherville was a bustling community that could supply all the necessities of life. And as one observer wrote, Wild Horse, or Fisherville, had a fine bustling town, with big stores, gaudy saloons with even more gaudy names, hotels, and dear knows how many hurdy-gurdy dance houses. Jack Fisher rushed out into the middle of the muddy street where a badly wounded young man lay face down. He dropped to his knees and gently rolled him over. He could see the ugly gashes where a series of lead slugs had ripped into his body. The young man moaned loudly and his breath came shallow and labored. Just then a loud crack of thunder reverberated down the canyon as a vivid bolt of lightning flashed through the hot, heavy air of the late July evening, sending a shiver down Jack Fisher's spine. "Get me some water and see if the doc is around," yelled Jack Fisher. "This young man is fighting for his life." Jack gently pushed and probed on the young man's shattered chest and torso. Then he stood up to see if help was on his way, and his hands dripped with fresh red blood. He knew that there was little hope for 27-year-old Tommy Walker. The best he could do was make his dying comfortable. "Will someone get out here and help me carry this young man back to his tent?" implored Jack, again looking around for help. But it seemed like everyone had suddenly disappeared as soon as the crack of gunshots had rang out. The exception was an American dubbed East Powder Bill, who had just come to Fisherville from the Powder River country of Montana Territory. He sat in a less sober state on the nearby wooden sidewalk, nursing his wounded hand. The top of his thumb blasted away. Bloody Irishmen, they sit around this stinking place all night, drinking and stoking their anger and ridiculing us Americans, trying to get up the nerve to make trouble. Then he up and shoots off my thumb, mumbled East Powder Bill to his friend Overland Bob Evans, who had wandered out to see what all the excitement was about. "If I were you, Burmeister, I'd take your friend Evans and make yourself scarce, because from the noise that's coming from inside that bar, there's going to be a vigilante party on your tail pretty quick," said Jack Fisher. "They can't do nothing to me. I was just acting in self-defense when I squeezed the trigger. Besides, I was shooting in the air, not at that young Irish lad," retorted East Powder Bill as he slid off into the darkness. By the time someone had come to help Jack carry Tommy Walker back to his tent, the wounded man's vital signs were failing. When the doctor arrived to examine the wounds, he gravely shook his head. "He's a strong young man, but I don't see him pulling through. Too much blood loss already." "Keep him comfortable the best you can. He's bound to hang on for a bit yet." Young Tommy Walker, a sawyer at the nearby lumber mill, did hang on for 6 more days before he succumbed to his wounds. And I'll just read one other portion here. The morning of August 5th, 1864 dawned with the jagged mountain peaks that hemmed in Fisherville shrouded with thick gray clouds. A light rain drizzled down, and by mid-morning it turned into an unseasonably heavy downpour. The rain pelted down on the leaky tents in the roofs of Fisherville, leave a glistening sheen to everything it touched. Adding to the somber quiet of the camp was the impending funeral service of the young Irishman Tommy Walker. Walker had been gunned down in the main street of the little encampment only 6 days earlier, the first murder on the banks of Wild Horse. "It's a shame to see such a young life snuffed out because of foolish gunplay," said Jack Fisher, one of the pallbearers carrying Tommy Walker's rough-hewn casket down the slippery hill to an area designated as Fisherville Cemetery, about a half a mile out of the camp. "Live by the gun, die by the gun," replied Bob Dorr from the other side of the casket as he tried to shield his face from the rain with one hand. "Just about plunked a couple of men myself the other day. Claim jumpers. Rotten, no good for nothing claim jumpers." "What was the problem?" asked Jack, struggling to maintain his grip on the slippery casket. "The problem? It was a bunch of Montanans from your neck of the woods down by Hellgate. I showed up to work my claim, and here's a bunch of them already picking and panning," said Bob. "Yeah, I heard that the Montana vigilante put a run on a bunch of the outlaws down from that part of the country. What happened to them, and where are they now?" asked Jack, worried about his own claims. "Well, I stood on the bank of the creek and ordered them off my ground. I told them I wanted no shooting, but if any man in the company thought he had better right to the claim than myself, then let him come up before me at 10 paces and settle the question by a fight to the finish with 6 shooters, stated Bob Dorr matter-of-factly, tapping the menacing-looking 6-shooter that was strapped to his hip with his free hand. Jack Fisher's hand slipped and the heavy casket crashed to the ground, spurring a barrage of annoying curses from the other pallbearers. "Sorry about that. This rain makes it hard to hold on."
It's very interesting.
"So did any of the Montanans step up to the challenge?" inquired Jack. "No, there was not a man in the crowd who dared to join issue with me. They packed up and left the claims, then quit the camp entirely." "I'm surprised I haven't heard about this incident before," said Jack. "Say nothing of it. I want no talk of it. It was nothing. Sure they would not fight, but that's all there was to it." A fresh pile of dirt heaped alongside a gaping 6-foot chasm told the pallbearers that they had reached the graveslide. Slowly and gingerly the men lowered the casket of young Tommy Walker into the muddy, musty-smelling earth overlooking the banks of Wild Horse Creek. As Jack Fisher picked up a spade and began shoveling the moist dirt back into the grave, the heavy clouds broke and a glorious view of the sun-washed peaks of the surrounding mountains made a serene background for the crowd of the ragtag miners who had come to pay their last respects to Tommy Walker. So many of you may have traveled or hiked up into Fisherville, and if you do, be sure to check out Tommy Walker's grave because it's up the Wild Horse past Fort Steele, about 10 kilometers. It was the first settlement in the Kootenays. So anyways, thank you very much. If you are interested, I'm selling the book for $20 and donating 10% to the Arts Council. So thank you.
Okay, now that we have our time settled, next we have up Sue Browning, local teacher, etc.
Thanks, Dorothy. Well, I don't do the mystery of murder so much as just the mystery of the universe and why people behave the way they do and the strange things that happen. So those are the kinds of poems that I'll be reading tonight. But first I want to do something never done before, which is to say, get a picture from the other side. So everybody put up their hand and wave. Thank you. Okay. I have 3 poems. This first one is called Flicker. I want to say I catch it. A bird like that in your hands is weightless, all heart and reeds. Young flicker tangled in the hillside grass, feather shafts still blushing their way to red. The stout beak cries, "Pee-year!" A flecked rustling below the chicory leaves. My mother can make birds fly, those that stop abruptly at the glass. She warms them between arm and breast, holds them to her mouth and breathes, tiny puffs inflating tiny lungs. Restored to branches where she sits them, they scold her, peeping. But this one by the bike path, a long fall from the nest, won't ever fly. Granted only half its gift by the world, it moves on unnatural ground, lurching. Still beautiful, it is half created. My mother and I circle. The flicker scoots away, and I quick step through coiled grass and reach. The one wing brushes through my fingers, as sturdy as a hollow-boned thing can be. I can't close the deal. A mother can. When I look back, the bird is in flight, a snapped, lifeless arc. It lands and the grasses close over it. I suppose this is a way for us to love it. This poem is called The Longest Day, and it's about how time stretches or compresses depending on how difficult things are. It's called The Longest Day. It is the time we hike out of the valley at midnight, the forest on fire behind us, the smell of smoke like a hot slap, and mice, more mice than we can fathom, skittering between our urgent feet. It is the time we lose the dog in the forest and we fight for 3 days over which of us is at fault, when, in fact, it was the dog's fault. After 3 days, the forest is merciful and lets her come back. It is the time we search along the riverbanks for the woman's body, the hank of red kerchief found shredded in a wet snag, not enough to solve anything. And her body finds a deep place to turn and turn until late summer. It is the time the beaver swims past, pulling a long branch, and I watch it for hours as it strips the bark off the candy-white cambium, mosquitoes plucking at my skin. It is the time the medicine runs out, and I lie on the carpet unclothed, staring at the door and willing someone, anyone, to come in. But I live alone. The door won't open unless I open it. It is the time the child we loved dies, a room with the metal table where we say goodbye. For years after, and even now, it is the time. It is the time when the light is shortest and the power blows out and the house, which is a long way from anywhere, is getting colder all the time. I go out into the snow and ski to the nearest working phone. And it's not bad in the snow under the pastel sun, because despite the effort and the cold, the urgency and the powerlessness, there's this. If today is the longest day, there's a chance tomorrow will be shorter. And my last poem is, everything about it is true, except the stuff I made up. I've dedicated it to a woman who actually lived. Her name is Mary Sue Merchant, and the poem is called Good Neighbor. I have to say before I read it that it is a poem very much in progress. The poet Apollinaire said a poem is never finished, only abandoned. It's going to be a long time before this one gets abandoned. So here we go. Mary Sue is home. She's been home for 18 months. Outside, the leaves have fallen twice and grown again, but never were raked up. Mail has clogged her box, so the postman doesn't stop here anymore. The phone was disconnected after a few missed bills. The birds and feral dogs no longer hover around her porch. And the neighbors, when they walk by, don't notice the lack of lights. They don't notice that Mary Sue has been keeping out of sight. She's an old maid, she's an odd one, she's a recluse. Let her keep to herself. Good neighbors just don't want it any other way. Better strange than known, better hidden than muddying the day. We dare not love our neighbors as ourselves. We fear being caught as busy fools spying through windows and through curtains. Besides, there are the strangely cumin-scented foods, strange accents or strange skins, the wreck marooned on blocks beside the porch, the prissy, exacting mowing of the grass, the light on to all hours, the screaming fights, the home nicer than ours. They are too young, they are too old, they are too quiet. Their prayer meetings, their godless states, their home brew and their garden gnomes, the wrong candidate supported on a stake. We fear the midnight online rants, the freezer full of bones, the pack of feral dogs she feeds. What we say on our bumper stickers, support our troops, make love, not war, Jesus fish, Darwin fish, honk if you're horny. Such things we bray to strangers on the street, but not a knock on the door to say hello. Mary Sue didn't make it to the bed. She lay on the braided rug and turned her head toward the door. For more than 500 days, nobody entered. Her dog was her companion while she lived and kept her company during her quiet respite on the floor. When hungry, he pulled kibble from the closet, but his water bowl was empty, and he lapped all the water from the saucers under plants. He could smell the water trapped beneath the toilet lid. He panted, and he died beside her, his nose pointed at her curled hand. Nothing inevitable but death and taxes. Mary Sue met them both. The taxman came by to sell the house for unpaid taxes. The acreage worth more than Mary Sue, I guess. It would have been better if the taxman had come first. Thanks.
Poem that she also did for this, just in case there was somebody that didn't come.
Now's your time.
Thank you, Dorothy. This poem is written from the point of view of a character in a novel that I've been working on forever, may continue to work on forever. This character escapes a cult. She's had a lot of abuse in her life, particularly spiritual abuse, which I define as happening when somebody uses another person's spiritual longings to build a power base for themselves. This poem is also kind of a prequel to the painting in the other room about Nevertheless I Live. It's called And Forgive Us Our Debts. Nothing left to give. Look into my empty sack, my empty jar. See my cold black torch. How am I to live? I cannot pay back what I owe till I get payback for my lack. And they took it. They squandered it. They spent my joy on riots. They spent my innocence on games. They threw my peace on the bonfire and danced around it. Let go. I've squeezed my eyes until they bled. I've held my breath until my heart pounded on death's door. Still, I cannot disappear into the disheveled dirt bed. And here you are, and you want more. How dare you? How dare you, God? How dare you? How dare you shove your saber hand into my chest and divide spent spirit from sullied soul to reach the hissing python? Let go. I can't let go. It's only anger, it's only hate that coiled around my crooked spine enables me to stand up straight and curse them. Let go. Aren't you gentle, Jesus, meek and mild? Go take your love to some purer child and stop that! You're hurting me! Let go. They poached my song, they caught my rhyme, they raped my soul. They took my time, they grabbed my mind and jammed it on a fearsome pike as a warning. They took my gates forever. I've damned the light and sealed the sash with dark green plastic meant for trash. What good are thickened walls of stone when the door's been burned to ash? Let go. The bill's right here. I have kept track. My hands will tighten round their necks. My hands are strong. They'll not be slack till I get everything I lack. Give it back! Give it back! Give it back! Let go. You let go. I'm offended by this loving hand that feels more like a gunshot wound. Let go. I can't let go. I won't let go. I don't want to let go. They owe me. Let go. Help me. Let go. You know, if I let go, it will kill me. I know. It's hard. I can't fill your hands until you empty them.
It's very good. As you can see, there's all sorts of talent here tonight. Next, though, we have another talented person, Robin Rader.
Well, I'm not out of town anymore. I've lived here for 2 years, but I came from New Mexico. I have 3 short poems. First one's called A Woman of Guilt. Facing west, I ask for help in letting go. Leave me, guilt. Inch by inch, I push her away, and she hovers over my skin at times. In those moments, I lighten, I lengthen. Later, she settles back down. She is stitched to me, a blanket of guilt. Facing west, I ask for power to release this guilt. Give me the snippers to cut the stitches. Guilt floats away. I look up, see a face, a body. She has taken shape through the years. A woman made up of guilt. I wave goodbye. Facing west, I ask for comfort, for wisdom, for courage. Who am I now without my blanket of guilt? How will I pacify my daughter? What if I don't get out of bed tomorrow? Guilt has been my fuel. What if I starve? This one's called Mountain Air, New Mexico. Pink crumbling adobe waits for the train. Wet clothes on the clothesline flap the cool breeze into her face. She waits for him. Freights clutter past. He'll sing her songs of Medicine Hat, Manitoba, Kicking Horse Pass. Following his freedom, he leaves her.
superstitious, she munches on flowers, keeping him safe. This one's called Not My Poem. To write a poem, I open the top of my skull. Words pour in, a torrent, cruising through my veins into my fingers that move the pen, often against my will. Don't write that. That is too weird. Hey, doesn't have to be good. Just channeling. Not my job to judge. Not my department to defend. Not my poem.
And last but not least, we have Sue Shaw with yet another theme on death. Murder, I'm sorry.
My mother told me going to church every week would pay off someday. It did, but not in the way she intended, as I will explain. I was a good Catholic girl, raised in the tradition of Sunday Mass. I preferred the High Mass, with its pomp, ceremony, burning incense, and wonderful choir. My workmates preferred the late afternoon Mass, dubbed the Drunkard's Mass, for obvious reasons. Then there was the Low Mass, a shorter, songless service, a sort of no-frills Mass, which started at 8 a.m., a ridiculous hour for one's days off. However, my boss, the sanctimonious dink that he was, always went to the early Mass, sure that he'd get extra kudos in heaven for sacrificing the sleep and the ceremony. On that fateful Sunday, the High Mass started out the same as any other. The choir sang the same old comforting hymns and lovely refrains to the priest's Kyrie. As a bonus, Sister St. Therese played the organ, and her graceful expertise with the old organ keys and knobs made those old pipes resonate divinely. When the priest launched into his favorite sermon on Love Thine Enemy, I was fully prepared to bow my head and take my customary nap. But this time, he said something quite unusual. Something about killing with kindness, I think it was. My mind drifted off to a TV special on minerals and vitamin supplements. I remember the host's warning that too much of a good thing could kill you. And then she recited a list of foodstuffs that could do exactly that, such as potassium, which can be found in something as necessary as coffee, or in something as innocuous as bananas. Then I thought about how much my boss, Percy Snodgrass, loved bananas, especially banana cream pie. He liked anything he didn't have to chew. Percy was the kind of boss who would never make a decision if there could be any unfavorable repercussions. He always wanted us to stick our necks out instead. But he was right there to reap the rewards if there were any. He was a spiteful boss and took enormous delight in pitting worker against worker. Sometimes the whole department would be up in arms over some stupid rumor the boss started. Percy would have made a dandy government bureaucrat, for he loved forms. Our shop was awash with forms. If we needed a new saw file, we would have to fill out a requisition for a single saw file. Far be it from us to have spares of anything. We had to fill out a form just to get a second roll of toilet paper. There were even forms to get more forms if we ran out. The boss was a miser and would not spend a dime on maintenance or on equipment in our shop. Our tools had wires so frayed we risked electrocution, there we are, if we used them, especially when the roof leaked, which was often. Luckily for the company, workers' compensation never visited and rarely fined the company in any case. Our work environment was as toxic as the gases we were forced to breathe, thanks to Percy's negligence. One day, someone was going to die, and I wanted it to be the boss. Lord knows, Percy Snodgrass needed killing. I reached under the church bench for my purse and the daytimer inside. Under the to-do list, I wrote, "Kill the boss," on the top line. And before the Mass had ended, I'd figured out how to do it. I'd kill the boss with kindness in the form of a banana cream pie made up of concentrated bananas on thick mocha crust, and I'd serve it to him with a cup of frothing cafe au lait, all together with enough potassium to get the boss going, and delightfully gone. After Mass, I drove through the spring slush to the local stores in Kimberley,
that's where I live, only to discover that we were out of bananas. I tried to go to Cranbrook, but an accident at the airport junction blocked the road. So I wound up driving all the way to Invermere. There I found a bonanza of bananas, the last bananas in the southeast Kootenays apparently. All night long I crushed the bananas and processed them in the electric food dryer just to get the right concentration and consistency. By morning I put the last batch into the dryer, adding a little lemon juice to prevent browning. When I got home that night, I could begin to make the pudding, the mocha crust, and the cafe. I could hardly wait. I went to work, but satisfied at last I was taking charge of my life, doing something positive. The boss sauntered in at 0800, looking unusually happy, even a bit coy. He was carrying something behind his back. "Guess what I have," he said in his simpering style. "Oh, goody," I barked. 20 questions first thing in the morning. Give me a break. "Come on," he whined. "Guess. You gotta guess what I have." He reminded me of the teacher's pet in grade 3 who got to pick the games we had to play at recess. "You've got shingles?" I asked hopefully. Percy shook his head. "The clap?" I ventured. He giggled and shook his head again. Well, I thought, I might as well listen and I might as well humor the jerk. Tomorrow he'll be dead, and I'll never have to listen to his sniveling voice again or play any of his silly games. Oh, joy. "I give up," I said, arranging my face into an expression of regret. "What do you have behind your back?" "Surprise," he blurted, and held out a box in his right hand. The box was wrapped in festive paper topped with the biggest bow I'd ever seen. "For me?" I gulped. "A present?" I was in a quandary. Could I have been wrong about the guy all these years? Maybe he cared after all. I opened it up, and there it was, a banana cream pie. I sniffed. There was no mistaking the odor of the crust. I looked at him with a wry expression. Mocha crust, I presume. He nodded enthusiastically and giggled some more. I sighed. "What, no cafe au lait?" He held up a cup in his other hand. Yep, it was cafe au lait, all right. Strong as hell and just as hot. I stared at him, but I couldn't summon the strength to look perplexed. He explained anyways. "I went to the early mass." Of course he did, the friggin' little twit. He got the sermon on killing with kindness before I did. I sighed again. What the hell, the little bastard had won. Might as well admit defeat and get this over with, one way or another. Life working under him was no life at all. So I stuck out my hand. "Hand me the fork," I said, my voice flat and desolate. Percy reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a fork. I took it. And then I noticed that the fork had unusually long tines. Long pointed tines. Very sharp tines. So you see, Your Honor, I couldn't help myself. I forked him and forked him and forked him until he was as pureed as the bananas in the pie.
Well, that concludes our evening with all the writers, and in a happy way, I guess, except for the bad boss. Anyway, now if you'd like some more hors d'oeuvres and wine or talk with the writers or some of the artists that are here, by all means do so. It's been a lovely evening. It's lovely to see you all come out. And don't forget, it's Earth Day, and we also have books by both Keith Powell and Manwoman here. So dig in your pockets and help them out, because then they help out the Outrageous Gallery then. Thank you very much.
Never occurred to me.
Before you leave, please subscribe to our channel. It will not only help you stay up to date with our videos, it will also be a nice way to show your support for the volunteers who make this project possible. Thanks for watching, and please tune in again.